What's going on, guys? It is Tempest from WrestleTalk.com, of course, joined by the one and only Sonal Lad. I'm sorry that we are about 10 minutes later than we're an hour and a bit later than usual, but thank you all for joining us. We are here to talk about the G1 Climax final, as well as basically do a roundup of the G1 Climax 30 tournament as a whole. We didn't do a podcast last week just on because we didn't want to clutter things up with the live show that took place that day anyway. But that being said, we're now here to talk about basically the last, 6-7 shows as much as possible, as well, of course, as the G1 Climax finals. So, Sonal Lad, how have you been? It's been a few days. How are things?
Yeah, it's been good. There's been a lot of wrestling that's finished now. There's a bit of a break before the next big tour. So I'm just trying to get loads of content out as well about the G1 and just try and process everything that's happened, because the weekend yesterday was an early start. I almost missed some of it because my alarm didn't go off.
Well, it was a very early start over here. It was 2 a.m. start for the show, which is as early as it got for us. But hey, let's get into things. We're gonna kind of start at the final and work backwards over anything that we may have missed. So, in case you were unaware, and in case you didn't read the title of this video, Kota Ibushi is your G1 Climax 30 winner. He is the first person to go back-to-back in the G1 Climax since Hiroyoshi Tenzan in 2003 and 2004. Very impressive feat. What do you think about the final, Sonal Lad?
So going into it, obviously, I saw in the chat, I was really sad that Jay did not make it to the final, because that meant one of my predictions was wrong. But yeah, I was over the mood that it was SANADA and Ibushi. I know I've seen stuff that said, obviously, their 2018 match was amazing. Last year's less so. I think this one was sort of in the middle of that. Like, I personally really liked it, but I know there are some people who maybe didn't think, they compared it to other G1 Climax finals we've had.
Yeah. That, to me, was kind of like the biggest thing, where I would never call this, this wasn't a bad match by any means, but the G1 Climax final from the last, 3 years have been 3 of the best matches I've, ever seen, whether it be the Kota Ibushi versus Jay White match from last year, Tanahashi and Ibushi from 2018, Omega and Naito from 2017. Just these were some of the very best matches of the whole year for the respective years. And this match was not that. This wasn't like the match of the year candidate. Some people said it may have been. I personally don't agree with that. It was just kind of it was a really good match, but not to the level of ones already seen in this tournament and in tournaments past.
I think that's exactly right. I was going to say that. Maybe it's not in terms of looking at it in terms of G1 finals. If you compare it to the tournament has given us such amazing matches. I sort of think it's a victim of its own success. Like, the G1 this year has had so many good matches. It was going to be hard to reach up to some of the top matches anyway.
Yeah, it was. And that was a big thing as well for me personally, because we saw in years past, we've had the tournaments all build to this really climactic, huge, impressive match. And maybe not always has it been the best match of the tournament, but you can at least put it among that same tier of matches being the best of the tournament. And again, I just didn't feel like that was the case this year. I felt like the matches that we'd seen on day 13 in particular, whether it be Minoru Suzuki and Kota Ibushi or Okada and Shingo Takagi, and there were a few others, but I felt like those matches really kind of outclassed this one. We've got Jabber JJ saying in the chat, and I do agree, that it appeared that Ibushi was kind of knocked loopy early in the match, and whether that had a big impact on it, I don't know, but it definitely felt like it did. It felt like this match was just kind of a half step off until maybe about the last 10 minutes when everything really came together. But still, this is the longest G1 match of all time, by about 12 seconds. But still, it was a long match. And to have things kind of be a step off for a good portion of it, I felt was a bit of a shame, but still really good match.
I think I sort of saw it because I know, I've said this, the start was pretty slow for two guys who are known quite athletically. And I think it could have had to do with Ibushi, obviously, at the start. But I almost think that in a sense, it did actually work because Ibushi, obviously, we knew he was injured from that match with Taichi where there was like God knows how many kicks thrown. And it's been a long tournament.
158.
Yeah, which is crazy in the amount of time that there was and the fact that that was basically the entire match. But also, Sanada's had quite a long tournament. So I think, in a sense, it helped that it was the final match, that maybe some of that like slow pace could be put down to like fatigue and stuff like that. But I think, it was a very good match. But I think, like we've said, the matches in the tournament itself have been so good that maybe that's the issue we're comparing it to.
Yeah, and it is difficult to think about when you're comparing things, because it's not necessarily fair to this match. But at the same time, that's just the high standard that New Japan has kind of built for itself. And so when you get a match that's like this, that I like, if I was going to give it a star rating, I'd probably give it like a 4.25 star range. And you're used to seeing like 5 or more in these kind of matches. So again, it's not necessarily fair to this match, but again, that's this kind of the situation that we're in. Christopher Jazzcat with a $10 super chat. So thank you very much, Christopher Jazzcat. He says Zack Sabre Jr. is the best. I don't know if you've seen, but Randy Andy Datson and Christopher Jazzcat have been kind of feuding over their thoughts on Zack Sabre Jr. in recent weeks. But he says Zack Sabre Jr. is the best. Said he didn't win. Ibushi looked like he got hurt. Sanada looked great. I think it's Ibushi's year. Reckon Sanada will be champ within 2 years. Thanks for the coverage. Loved it. Well, thank you for watching it. We couldn't do our coverage without people watching it, so it is very much appreciated. That being said, what do you think about Sanada going forward? We have, seen him. This was kind of like the first time he was really thrown a bone as a potential main event star. And will we see this going forward? Will he be that next kind of main event player? Maybe, maybe not. What do you think?
I've always loved Sanada and always thought he's one of the guys that if he's given something, he can go with it. And I actually thought this was going to be his time, but I think we need to remember he didn't win the G1, but he still has that win over Naito. And obviously we've seen the power struggle card, it's versus Evil. I think what they're going to do with Sanada, because Naito has made it clear, he said he doesn't want to defend both titles every time, because then he thinks he might as well unify it. So I think if they're going to build Sanada up, what they're probably going to do is have him go after Naito. That's if Evil doesn't win. And then maybe just go after the IC title first, build him up rather than... Because I think if they straight away just give him the heavyweight, I think it's going to be one of those, maybe a bit like Evil where he lost it in the first defense.
Yeah.
I mean, like second defense. So I think they're going to maybe build him up a bit slower than we would hope. But I think that's going to be better for Sanada in the long run.
Yeah, it makes sense. And although some people in the chat may not know, I will be appearing on the True Heel Heat podcast when that gets posted this week. But that being said, I mentioned on that podcast that I would not be surprised at all if we saw Sanada face Naito at Wrestle Kingdom on either, well, I guess it would be night 2. But given that it's a 2-night show, we're going to need big matches for both shows. So while you'll see Naito versus Ibushi on one night, I could very easily see Naito face Sanada, whether it be for a title or not, on the second night. And at least have that be that kind of, not necessarily a stepping stone match, but a further progression into seeing what he can do as a main event star. Because, I mean, New Japan needs more top stars in that position. Not to say that guys like Okada are getting stale, but maybe he's a little bit stale,
At the moment, yeah.
At the moment, it's tough. You need to have new guys constantly moving up and down and having the card shift around. And whether I don't think Evil really kind of made the most of his run as a top guy, but I think Sanada would be someone that the fans could definitely get behind and have be that next guy, So we'll have to see. That being said, we saw as well the A block and B block finals this past weekend. We had, of course, Kota Ibushi coming out of the A block, Sanada coming out of the B block, but there were a ton of really important big matches on the A block side, one of which included the heel turn of Will Ospreay. So let's start there and kind of go through everything else. True Heel Heat here's in the chat saying, thank you for joining us, Tempest. Always great analysis and appreciate we share the same disdain for great Okan. Yes, we do. And we were just about to talk about that as well, with Will Ospreay turning heel and Great-O-Khan making his re-debut attacking Kazuchika Okada. What did you think, Sonal?
So I was at work actually in the morning, so I had to catch up with it later. But yeah, I was trying to avoid any spoilers, and then I was scrolling on Twitter and I saw a picture of Great-O-Khan. Now, I've seen Great-O-Khan a few times in the UK.
Yeah.
And I was sort of confused. I was like, oh, what are they going to do? Because he was really doing amazing, as Will Ospreay said, undefeated. And then I saw a picture of B Priest and I watched it and I was like, I'm surprised because he is so popular in Japan. It's a very weird thing to do because he is one of the top baby faces, like when he returned and everything, especially for Japanese fans. But I think this might be the perfect thing to get Okada out of that stale position that he's in at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you're going to look at trying to do if you're looking at trying to get Okada to be in a very like interesting, exciting feud, you're not going to get much more exciting and interesting than a feud with Will Ospreay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously he came out on the G1 Climax final tag match that he and Sho had against Ospreay and Great-O-Khan. He was fired up, and it was a fired up Okada that we really haven't seen. He wasn't fired up like when he faced Yujiro, and the Bullet Club had cost him the New Japan Cup and everything. So it will be very interesting to see what happens with this going forward. And hey, people called it, man. Will Ospreay, people noticed the different inflection in his voice when he was cutting promos after matches and everything, saying that he seemed more like Kenny Omega with his promos. And I was like, oh, you know, maybe he's just, you know, trying to be more confident as this and that. It's like, no, you guys called it. You guys called it. This was clearly a plan that they had going forward. And there you have it. Randy Andy Datson's in the chat trying to be a funny man here. Saying, hi guys, thoughts on Will Ospreay. Also, you're going to be covering more New Japan in the future. You're funny, Andy. You're really funny. In case you don't know, we will see if we cover more New Japan. Fingers crossed, but I'm sure that we'll do it. That being said, what else did you think about the matches on the A block side? I've said personally, I was a really big fan of how the A block kind of played out, where just about every match on the A block side meant something on the final day. Couldn't say the same for the B block, but on the A block side, you had 4 guys who all realistically could make it to the G1 Climax final, and every match had that progression of guys being picked off and eliminated and kicked out of contention and that sort of thing. What did you think?
I think it was great. I thought sort of like that. Even you mentioned obviously the 4 guys, but there was little matches like the first one, Yujiro versus Jeff Cobb. Like, can we just mention that Yujiro actually got a pin over Jeff Cobb? Like, out of anybody that they were going to have Yujiro win against, it was Jeff Cobb. So little things like that, like a little storyline that, oh, well, where's Yujiro going to go from there? Then we obviously had Ospreay and Okada, and you know what? It was such a good night of matches, like whether it was obviously the Young Lion match or the bigger ones towards the end of the night. And I mean, I loved the B block one as well, but I get what you mean. There was a lot more at stake, and I think it is because of we've said this, the caliber of stars is a lot higher in terms of people and their place on the card in the A block, and that always is going to help. But because there's always going to be a match with a big name, even if it's against Yujiro, you've got Jeff Cobb who's huge, you've got Suzuki, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, and that was, to me, the big difference, where every match in the A block had someone that you would care about. The B block, to me, did not have that. We've mentioned this over the last few weeks, but like I didn't really particularly care about Hiroki Goto in this tournament, didn't really care about Yoshihashi in this tournament, and it was just a bunch of different mismatches where it was like, okay, well, if I wasn't doing this for work, I would probably skip this match, you know? Things like that. There was never a match on the A block side that I felt like I should skip. Even when it was facing Yujiro, I felt like, hey, Jeff Cobb is still in this match. Jay White is still in this match. Oh, Ospreay, Ibushi, Okada, Shingo, whoever it may be, one of the members of that match made me want to watch it.
Definitely.
And that, to me, it was best exemplified in the A block final when there were still so many guys that were involved, still so many guys that were alive in the tournament, and so on and so forth. So we will kind of now break down some of the matches that we will have seen over the course of this tournament. Obviously, we didn't do our podcast last week, which means there's a whole week of shows that we haven't gotten a chance to get to. The first of which was day 13. I've had people say that this was the best match or the best card of the whole year. I've listened to Dave Meltzer say that this was maybe the best 2.5 hour show of all time. And personally, I think that might be a little bit strong.
Yeah.
But it speaks to just how good this tournament and this show in particular was. Of course, if anyone has forgotten, this was the show where we got Tomohiro Ishii versus Jeff Cobb, Yujiro Takahashi versus Jay White, and then Shingo Takagi versus Kazuchika Okada, Kota Ibushi versus Minoru Suzuki, and Will Ospreay versus Taichi. So a very, very, very good show. Two of the best matches of the whole year, not just the tournament. But Sana, what did you think of it?
Honestly, I mean, like, going into day 13, I already had I was like, SANADA versus Naito is one of my favorite matches. Loved it. Then we had Ibushi versus Suzuki, and literally, Chris Charlton said it. It just blew everything that I thought of out of the water. Like, that match was something that I didn't expect to love as much as I did, because they're two very different guys. We've not seen them wrestle each other a lot, but I watched that and I went, I will happily watch Suzuki and Ibushi fight again and again and again.
Well, yeah, I mean, so many of these matches, we will just see, like, I will never get tired of seeing some of these matches. Just about anything with Shingo Takagi in them, I will never get tired of seeing. You know, his matches with Minoru Suzuki in particular.
Yeah.
You know, his match on the final night of the A block was just fantastic, as you know, we're kind of used to seeing at this point. But that doesn't mean we're getting tired of it. And we will see it again at Power Struggle, which is something to look forward to. But it was just so good. You know, I can't say enough about the A block. It always seems to me that there is a it always seems to me that there's one block that stands out more than the other. And this may have been the biggest example of that I've seen in recent years, where this A block was just stacked from top to bottom, you know. And I think the biggest thing, because I thought that day 13 was the show of the tournament as well. I do. That being said, I think a good portion of that was also due in no small part to the Jay White Yujiro match. It didn't have to be like a great match, because it was an angle in the form of a match, meaning that this extra bit of the show that you might not be as excited about for Yujiro, it made you excited for it in a different way and for a different reason. And what we're going to now see about the Bullet Club, you know, Evil seems to kind of align himself more with Yujiro. Jay White seems to more have aligned himself with Kenta, and obviously Jay White and Yujiro faced each other in the tournament. Evil and Kenta faced each other in the tournament. And now that kind of cross-brand Bullet Club thing is going to happen. We don't really know what the plans are. Maybe there's going to be a Japanese Bullet Club versus foreigner Bullet Club type deal. I don't know. What do you think about the Bullet Club going forward and what we might see?
So I actually I recorded a video for my YouTube channel later, which I've just plugged Sonal's Life. But I sort of had a thing where it was just a random thought, and obviously we've got the matches set for Power Struggle. What if Evil beats Naito and then Jay beats Ibushi, and then Wrestle Kingdom it's Jay versus Evil? And personally, it's not what I want to see. I think it's been too soon since we've had the last Bullet Club Civil War, and I just think, especially with Evil at the moment, I've personally not, like, we've talked about this before, like Evil Dick Togo, it's personally not a great combination at the moment. We just keep seeing. So I just think, especially because Evil's so new to it, it's just going to be a sort of like a replica of what happened when Cody was there. And I just don't think we need it at the moment. I prefer a cohesive Bullet Club, and that way they're a lot more powerful.
Yes, I agree. To me right now, the Bullet Club is kind of missing their identity. Like, we don't really know what the group is. And I've kind of felt that way ever since the Elite left the group. Like, Jay White has been very good as a wrestler, but I don't feel like, I think he would be a very good leader of the Bullet Club, but at no point does this Bullet Club feel like it has in the past. You know, the Bullet Club, when it was on top in years past, was always like, you know, Carl Anderson cutting promos talking about how they're taking over and such, and you had, you know, the Young Bucks and and Kenny Omega and these really big personalities. And it just doesn't feel like that same sort of group right now. Jay White is obviously a really big personality. But aside from that, many of the big Bullet Club names that we've gotten used to, like Tama Tonga, Tangaloa, Bad Luck Fale, they are all on the sidelines now for obvious reasons. But beyond that, I don't feel like a bunch of these guys have that same kind of like really big, larger-than-life heel personalities that we're used to seeing from Bullet Club. I don't get that. I love Taiji Ishimori, but I don't get that same feeling from Taiji Ishimori, and there's a bunch of different guys like that in the group right now.
I think another issue, as you were saying that, we keep getting new members very quickly. The faction is quite big if you think about it. It's one of the reasons why when Bullet Club first started with Prince Devitt, it was so successful. It's one of the reasons LIJ is so successful. They're so picky about their members. They're so tight-knit. I think bringing all the, like, for example, Jay White, that was fine. That was a big storyline. And it's been great bringing in Kenta, but then bringing in Evil, Dick Togo, when you brought in Jado and Gedo, you've suddenly gone from a very tight-knit and dominant faction to something that, as we've seen now, the leader is struggling to control, and that is what led to the Civil War in the first place, when you obviously had like Tama Tonga, Tangaloa, but then Cody and Hangman Page coming. I think for Bullet Club to be successful, they need to go back to the roots. They need to take example from like LIJ in the original Bullet Club. Stay small, stay dominant, because you're not going to have all these rifts in the faction.
Yeah, because at the start of Bullet Club, like, we know Bullet Club to be this big faction. Once AJ Styles took over, different people were kind of added in here and there. But at the start, it was 4 guys. It was just Prince Devitt, Carl Anderson, Tama Tonga, and Bad Luck Fale. That was the entire group. So exclusivity, I think, really helps all factions in pro wrestling. Obviously, there are different ways to look at it. New Japan is not the same as like WWE and AEW and that sort of thing. So there are for sure differences. But I definitely agree that like Los Ingobernables has been maybe the most successful faction over the last few years. And it's due in no small part to only having 6 members ever. They've only ever had 6 members. And that's with, guys coming in and, guys being on their way out. So we'll have to see. Andy Dasson is again in the chat trying to get me in trouble. Says, I thought you were starting on the website at 3 p.m. That is not true, sir. You need to figure out when you schedule, folks. That being said, I am scheduling pieces to go out as well. So get off my back, Randy. Jobber JJ is also in the chat. Gives a $5 for the super chat. Very much appreciated, Jobber JJ, and as well as anyone who chooses to super chat. Just saying, day 13 was insane. Best day of the G1. Ishii versus Cobb was stiff as a horse. Suzuki versus Ibushi. I had a tear of joy, and is why I love wrestling. Stiff as a horse. That is about as stiff as a horse a match as you will see. Just big, beefy men beating each other very hard. We didn't get into that match necessarily, the Ishii versus Cobb match, but that was another standout match of that show. And it was one of the bigger wins that Jeff Cobb has gotten in the tournament. And I've heard a lot of people say Jeff Cobb's best match of his whole career. What did you think of that one?
I think we've said this so many times, I feel like repeating. If this was a main event, if this had main evented the show and had more time, it would have possibly been a match of the year. I mean, obviously that card was so stacked, like it was impossible to put everyone. But yeah, if you'd have given that a bit more time, a bit more of like a spotlight, I sort of worry to think like what the two would have done to each other and the state of them coming out of that match.
Yeah, I mean, this to me, we have spoken a lot about Jeff Cobb's position on in this tournament, just kind of saying like, if he was positioned in main events, he probably would be like a standout performer because Jeff Cobb is obviously very good. That being said, this was a match that I think transcended that. And Tomohiro Ishii being Tomohiro Ishii and one of the best wrestlers in the entire world, you can have those kind of really great matches in the first match or second match on a card, even though you're not positioned as the main event, you can have a main event caliber match. That being said, if this match was the main event, it probably would have been like a match of the year candidate as opposed to just match of the show, match of the tournament, all of those sort of things. Just absolutely fantastic. Were there any matches from the last week, other than day 13, obviously, that kind of stood out as, because I know one for me was Tanahashi and SANADA, I thought was one of the better B block matches that we had seen. But I guess we can talk about that match a little bit as well. But were there any other matches as well that have stuck out to you?
So yeah, this one's a bit of a weird one because it's not going to be match of the year. It's not. It was Zack Sabre Jr. versus Yano, just because I think it was a very different match. Obviously, it's being a Yano match, but it was a very different match for Yano. It went over 10 minutes. There was actually proper wrestling, and it was actually quite nice because we know Zack Sabre Jr. is so charismatic, and we properly got to see that in this match. Like, even coming out, he was telling Yano, he's like, I'm not taking any of this today. We saw him try and do some of Yano's tactics, and I think, okay, it's not as the caliber, but for me, it's one that sticks out and one that always pops into my head.
Yeah, that was a very good one as well. Christopher Jazzcat with another $5 super chat. So thank you very much, Christopher. Says, if I could change one thing about New Japan, it would be to get rid of legit headbutts. Jeff Cobb and Ishii are both amazing without concussing. I can't speak. Amazing without concussing themselves. I wholeheartedly agree. Obviously, we see this in Ishii's matches a lot more than we would have otherwise. But you know, after the whole Shibata thing, I really don't need to see clunking ram headbutts in my pro wrestling. There's a reason that companies like WWE have outlawed chair shots to the head. You know, they do damage. You need to protect your brain, and this is something that that needs to be outlawed in one form or another. I know they don't like to put restrictions on what talent can do, but for the sake of their health, like, put a stop to this one. I don't think it adds anything to matches, and it detracts a lot.
I think we've seen, especially from Ishii, so and the thing is, it's not just one or two. Like, he'll have matches, even Suzuki does this well, where they just headbutt their opponents, and it is sort of like, at first you're like, oh, and then it like goes on, and you're like you want to hide because you're just so worried about them because they're real. Like, they hurt. Wrestling, they're real.
If you've ever accidentally knocked heads with someone, you know that doesn't feel good. So yeah, maybe you don't want to be doing that in pro wrestling. We've got an interesting question here from Carol Wands in the chat saying, as a person new to New Japan Pro Wrestling, where can I find good videos on it? This is an interesting question and very kind of difficult to answer because New Japan Pro Wrestling is very strict on the use of their videos. So if you're not going to find it from their official YouTube accounts, it's very difficult. Of course, that is probably the best and most, the easiest place to find New Japan Pro Wrestling videos is things like The Recount, The Wire, narrated by Kevin Kelly on New Japan Pro Wrestling's YouTube channel. Otherwise, if you wanted to seek out Showbuckle's old videos, I believe they are currently on Dailymotion. All one word, Showbuckle. He is one of the reasons that I got into New Japan Pro Wrestling. He does kayfabe history videos on a number. He hasn't done one in a couple of years just because New Japan's strict restrictions, not allowing him to use footage and putting it on YouTube, things of that nature. But his videos have always been very, very good. And of course, as True Heel Heat is saying in the comments, going on New Japan Pro Wrestling World when they have free matches also helps tremendously.
Yeah, that's every Monday, I think they do. I think I've noticed though that they take it down the next week on YouTube specifically. But yeah, New Japan World's the best. Like, the recounts are really good. But even just like talking to people on Twitter, it's not going to be videos and stuff, but it's going to be a really good way to get introduced, because sometimes it can be daunting watching a show and not knowing anything. So yeah, speak to people online. New Japan World's obviously the best. Like, their archive is massive. So I mean, for the price, you get a lot, and especially if, for example, if it's a month like this, you literally jam packed with shows. You get your money's worth.
Yes, and we've also had people ask over like the last month what to do if you are interested in getting started with New Japan. How would you look at getting into it? And what I've continually told people is just find somebody that you latch onto, watch their matches, and then if you find matches and other people that they're wrestling that you can then branch out and start watching their matches. And eventually, hopefully, you will start watching matches of everyone in the company. You know, that's kind of how I started, where the first person that I recognized from New Japan Pro Wrestling was Hiroshi Tanahashi. I knew he was really good. So I just started watching his matches, and obviously that quickly evolved into me watching Shinsuke Nakamura matches, Kazuchika Okada matches, AJ Styles. Well, obviously I knew who AJ Styles was already, but guys like Kenny Omega, and it just kind of evolves from there. And that ultimately is probably the the best way for me to recommend people do that, is especially now that you're getting guys like, you know, Kenny Omega's not in the company anymore, but guys like Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho, if they're in, and you're just like, I recognize that name, I've seen them in this company or that company, you know, Zack Sabre Jr., as Rabambi says in the chat as well. You can then take that match and watch. It's like, oh, Chris Jericho's wrestling a guy named Tetsuya Naito. Let me watch more Tetsuya Naito's matches because they're really good. Stuff like that. And it just makes it that much easier to follow different people and expand your horizons.
Yeah, it's definitely like I knew about Kenny because I'd been watching Be the Elite somehow, watched his match at Wrestle Kingdom with Jericho because I knew Jericho, then watched he had the feud with Jay White. And I guess it's all thanks to Kenny Omega that I am now a Jay White fan.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kenny.
Yeah, thanks, Kenny, for that one.
Kenny.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are kind of saying who got them into New Japan. You know, of course, we've got people saying it was Chris Jericho, it was Zack Sabre Jr., it was Kenny Omega, AJ Styles. That kind of ends up being, you know, Jon Moxley. You know, we've got a lot of that now. It was a lot more difficult back in like 2012, 2013, where there wasn't that foreign, like the Bullet Club existed in 2013, 2014, but it wasn't this huge thing that it has kind of turned into over the following years. So it was harder then to get into New Japan Pro Wrestling from as an outsider perspective, and there wasn't as much English commentary. You know, the English commentary nowadays really, really helps. Andy Datson says Tempest got me into it. Yeah, kind of by force a little bit, don't you think? But that being said, following the G1 Climax tournament, we have Power Struggle to look forward to. And Power Struggle is, of course, New Japan's next big show. It will be taking place the first week of November, and the card has already been revealed for it. Now, some matches I'm looking forward to more than others. Before I get into that, Carol Wan says, "Give me Mox versus anyone, and I will watch it." You watch just about any of Jon Moxley's matches from New Japan, and they will be primo. Especially matches with Tomohiro Ishii in last year's G1, both of his matches with Juice Robinson 2019, and as well his match with Minoru Suzuki from earlier this year. Still maybe one of my favorite matches of the entire year.
And one that's not as thing. Jon Moxley versus Shota Umino.
Yeah, because I love Shota Umino so much, so
like
much.
That's also like a good thing. Like people were saying, like to get to know things like that, you get to know the young lions, and obviously Shota's on excursion at the moment. But if you watch those, when they come back eventually, it'll be a lot easier to grasp hold of them. So yeah, even go back and watch some of the young lion matches because you'll get amazing ones like Shota versus Moxley, and yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, they're so good. I mean, Shota Umino is on another level as a young lion, and I can't wait for him to come back. We've got Fightful in the chat saying FTF, and also Tempest is the accuracy legend. Hey, I am the fact checker for a reason. I am not just a gimmick. This is all stuck up in here. But yes, Christopher Jazzcat saying also chuck a tenner to New Japan Pro Wrestling World and binge all of Moxley's G1 Climax matches. A very good suggestion. They were all at least good, with some being fantastic. His match with Ishii is the best match I've ever seen from Jon Moxley by a fairly wide margin. But yes, Power Struggle, as I was getting into before we were kind of taken off track there. The main event is going to be Tetsuya Naito versus Evil again.
I mean, I guess we're going to say Tetsuya Naito versus Evil and Dick Togo. Because he's gonna be there. We already know this.
Yeah, we had a long discussion with True Heel Heat about this match that'll be on the podcast coming out this week. I am sick of this match. I have seen it 3 times now in the last 6 months, and I am not excited to see it again. Their first match at the New Japan Cup final, or no, at Dominion as a result of the New Japan Cup final, was not very good. No. It was the lowest rated IWGP Heavyweight Championship match by Dave Meltzer since he started consistently covering the New Japan Pro Wrestling shows, and that goes back to like 2012. They didn't have a very good match then. The match in Jingu, I would say, was good, decent, a solid decent, but it wasn't great. And then, of course, their match in the G1 Climax in day 14 was, again, just not all that good. It was fine, but I need better than fine in a main event match in New Japan.
Are we saying, I'm thinking this because in the past we've seen Evil do great matches. Are we saying that this might be partly due to the constant interference of Dick Togo? Because we've seen Evil do things with chairs before, and he still put out amazing matches. It just feels like now there is so much interference, like even compared to someone like Gato. Gato's in there sometimes, but we don't seem to get as actively involved. And it's sort of like Gato's a smaller part of Jay White's match because Jay White has this personality to outshine that. Evil seems to be sort of being lost with all of these dirty tactics, especially with Dick Togo. And I feel like get rid of him, let Evil put on a match that we saw pre-Bullet Club, and then we might get a higher quality of match.
Yes, I think personally that Evil currently is miscast. I don't enjoy him in this role. I think Jay White, although some of their matches are similar in the sense that they both have interference, Jay White just does it much better. I think he does a much better job of playing the heel in these matches. Evil I enjoy his matches so much more if he's the baby face, or at least the tweener that leans baby face. Right?
Mainly the thing that Los Ingobernables de Japón, they are the tweeners. That's why people love them, because we can cheer for them. But even when they do bad tactics, we're not shocked. Like maybe, for example, if a member of Taguchi Japan did it, I think that's where Evil works. And I just think Dick Togo, and we've seen Evil breaks the rules. He broke the rules in LIJ. He doesn't need Dick Togo. It doesn't really need him.
It does. I mean, hopefully this allows us to kind of get this match out of the way, which is not how I want to look at a New Japan Pro Wrestling main event. No. But I would much rather see this match take place at Power Struggle than have it take place at Wrestle Kingdom. And that's the big thing. Because, Naito lost to 3 people in the G1 Climax, and it was Evil, SANADA, and Kenta. Now, Kenta is a little bit preoccupied, which I'll get to in just a second. Yeah. But this leaves either SANADA or Evil, and I would rather, because I believe that we could see SANADA face Naito on night 2 of Wrestle Kingdom, and I would rather see that than see Evil face Naito at Wrestle Kingdom. So if this is just the path that we have to take to get to a more desirable outcome, that's the price that we will pay. But if you just had better matches, then I wouldn't have to be worried about seeing this match anyway. But that being said, also at Power Struggle, we will see the rubber match between Minoru Suzuki and Shingo Takagi. Yay!
Something that I could literally watch that. Whereas you've said we really just don't want to see another Evil versus Naito, Shingo versus Suzuki is something that I know a lot of people would gladly watch again and again and again, especially for the Never title.
Yes, this is just about the polar opposite of that, where I could watch this match every single day, every week for months on end and not get tired of it. They're just so good together. I mean, Shingo Takagi has good matches with pretty much everybody. Minoru Suzuki is, very much the same way. He's just been fantastic. Him wrestling this way at 52 years old is unbelievable. Crazy. It's completely unbelievable. And having these matches and being so good, it's truly a testament to how great a performer he is. And I don't know what this will mean going forward into Wrestle Kingdom, because I think that at this point Shingo Takagi should be positioned for a big match at the Tokyo Dome.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that will kind of depend on if he wins this match or not. Whether Suzuki or Shingo Takagi go into the Tokyo Dome as the champion will kind of dictate, obviously, having a championship match. And I'm happy with either of them getting a championship match, in the Tokyo Dome. But I would very much like to see them both in a prominent position going into that big show.
Definitely. I think it also does depend on what they're going to have the rest of the year. Like, is Shingo or Suzuki going to be involved in World Tag League? That might also, because obviously Shingo's not done World Tag League, I don't think. And obviously, if SANADA does go to Tokyo Dome, it'll be him. Suzuki as well, he's teamed with Iizuka. Iizuka's not there, Lance Archer's not there. So I guess it does depend on if there is another idea for them at Wrestle Kingdom, but I really hope they both make it onto the main card because I don't think Suzuki was on it last year.
Nope. He only came in and challenged Moxley.
Yeah.
In that, he wrestled on the first show, but he came out and challenged Moxley, and it was very, very big, very cool moment. But still, you want to see him wrestle on these shows. He's had great matches at Wrestle Kingdoms before, and I want to see that happen again.
If New Japan aren't going to give us Minoru Suzuki in the main event, just give us Minoru Suzuki at Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah. And Christopher Jascat with another $5 super chat. Thank you again, Christopher, saying Evil has never been good. He sucked all the way back in Ring of Honor as Takeaki Watanabe, and he still sucks now. New Japan Pro Wrestling seemed to have a blind spot with him. I'm not going to go so far as to say he's always sucked because he's had very good matches, but he definitely, I thought he was on the lower end of Los Ingobernables de Japón, behind SANADA, behind Shingo. And I mean, if we're talking strictly in ring work, behind Hiromu as well. And he's the one that they've chosen to be in the main event. And I don't think it's really working so much.
I think it's sort of the issue is the circumstances now. So like, what would have happened maybe if there was no pandemic and everything would have been normal? Would they still have moved Evil to Bullet Club this early? You sort of think they've said this before, like with Jay White and when Omega left, that he was an interim champion for that. I think we've got to think like why it's happened. And I also think like you should give Evil some credit. Like he has put on some good matches. He's not awful. I just think, like you said, compared to the other members of LIJ, like even Bushi, like Evil's got that kind of style that's maybe not as exciting to watch compared to obviously Hiromu, Naito, and things like that.
Yeah, again, I think he's just miscast. Some people do better as wrestlers in different situations, and I don't think this is the correct situation for him to be in. I think it's as simple as that. If put in a different situation, I think he would succeed and do much better. But also at Power Struggle, we're going to be seeing Kota Ibushi defend his briefcase, his right to challenge certificate, against Switchblade Jay White. Now, they wrestled in the G1 Climax tournament. Of course, Jay White came out on top. Kota Ibushi, he's lost a couple in a row now to Jay White after having beaten him in the G1 Climax final last year. So this will be interesting. We don't really see the G1 Climax winner lose the briefcase, before the Dome or anything like that. So I don't think necessarily that Jay White's going to come out and beat him, but anything can happen. He's at a level where it wouldn't shock me, Yeah. We've seen in previous years, like, Evil's pardon me. Evil is challenging for the briefcase last year against Ibushi, and it's like, well, I don't think like mid card Evil is not going to beat Ibushi and take the briefcase and face Okada at the Tokyo Dome. Jay White could at least be put on the marquee of Wrestle Kingdom main event, and it wouldn't be like, oh, I'm not going to watch that match. Like, no, I would. I just don't necessarily think it's going to happen.
I think, I mean, obviously, if Jay White does go on to win it, then I think I'll maybe say I did get my predictions right for the G1. But I think it is the case that if it's going to happen any year, it might be this year, because like you said, if someone maybe from the lower card challenged Ibushi, you'd be like, probably not. But Jay White, they keep building him up. Last year, he didn't get his Wrestle Kingdom moment because he obviously lost to Naito. on the first night, it could be his year. Also, you've got to remember the first time and the only time he's held the heavyweight championship, he lost it on his first defense. So I think they might decide that now is the time for him to have that title and hold it for hopefully longer than the 2 months that he held it last time.
Exactly. We've got a number of good chats going on here. Me saying mid-card evil. Andy Datson says mid-card evil sounds like a Baron Corbin faction. I'm talking about New Japan here, Andy. I don't want to think about Baron Corbin. But besides that, we've got a lot more people talking down to evil, saying evil is at a level like Jinder Mahal. Again, I think that's a bit harsh.
It's a bit harsh. Like, evil's a lot better. Evil's been booked a lot better and has had a lot better matches than Jinder Mahal.
Yes. But you know, everyone's entitled to their opinion. And just for clarification, yes, Jobber JJ, the contract that Ibushi has is as a result of winning the G1. Typically, they defend the G1 Climax challenge right certificate at least once before the Tokyo Dome, sometimes more depending on how many times they are beaten in the G1 Climax tournament itself. Abhinav Chiramala with the $7 Canadian, right on, super chat saying Kenta, J, God, Fale, and ELP should be the Bullet Club with Gato and Jado as managers. Also, why do I hate it when Togo interferes but not care when Gato does? I think it's just a lot more like transparent. Jay White seems to work the interference into his matches a lot better.
Yeah.
You know, I just think Jay White's a better heel. You know, he's a better heel than Evil is.
I've seen that as well. I mean, I think we should definitely put Ishimori in there. Like, he might not be outwardly heel, but honestly, he is the perfect fit for Bullet Club. He's a great, like, I know when ELP came in, I was slightly annoyed because I was like, no, it should be Ishimori. But yeah, I think when you count who should be in Bullet Club, Ishimori should definitely be in there because he is that different kind of Bullet Club. Like, he is high flying. He has this charisma as well that fits perfectly in Bullet Club as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, my issues with Ishimori being in Bullet Club is more so just him. I don't know. He doesn't have that same. He has a charisma and a swagger. Pardon me a second. Oh, goodness. Oh, a tickle in my throat. But Ishii, or not Ishii. Goodness, it's been up too long. The G1 Climax has made me go crazy. But Ishimori, he doesn't have that like kind of cocky American swagger that we're used to seeing in Bullet Club. You know, it's a different kind of swagger that he has, and mixing in with a proper, more focused Bullet Club, I think would do him a lot of good. Because when he came into the faction, it was right as the Elite and everything was about to split apart from the rest of the group. And I don't know, he just kind of got lost in much of the shuffle in that early run there. You know, even still, when he was introduced, it was like, oh, he's going to be the junior of the group when Marty Scurll was already the junior of the faction. And then it just, I don't know, the whole thing just kind of felt out of sync. And finally, you know, hopefully going forward with whatever they end up doing with Bullet Club, it will give them a chance to focus up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also, I'm a bit worried maybe with Best of Super Junior Cup, if ELP is there, we've seen it in the past, like the two of them, ELP has a massive ego.
Yes.
And he obviously said he's a very good fit for Bullet Club, but it worries me that once again, like we've seen when ELP debuted for New Japan, Ishimori is going to get pushed to the back, even as IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion.
Yeah. So going forward, one of the more interesting matches for Power Struggle, however, is Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Kenta. And they're going to be battling over Kenta's IWGP United States Championship Challenge Right certificate that he won by winning the New Japan Cup USA tournament. Will we possibly be seeing Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Jon Moxley after this?
I really hope so, because you know what? I think it would be really good. I mean, we've seen like Moxley matches in the past in New Japan and have been like, he's used like chairs and tables and stuff like that. I think if he goes against Tanahashi, we could probably see just a very clean match, because we've seen in the past, if anyone can bring out the best and the most professional wrestler, then it's Tanahashi. And I think I'd much rather see Moxley versus Tanahashi than Moxley versus Kenta.
Yeah. And on top of that, like, I just have all the love in the world for Hiroshi Tanahashi. I want to see him wrestle every single day. Just
Yeah.
fantastic stuff. But that being said, like, we saw Hiroshi Tanahashi appear on AEW Dynamite, you know, for Chris Jericho's celebration. Obviously, there will be a lot of different politics and different things going into a potential match with Tanahashi and Moxley. I don't know how you even do this match right now because, you know, Moxley is the AEW World Champion, and he's not going to go in and lose a match to a New Japan Pro Wrestling guy while being the AEW World Champion. It maybe, I don't think he's going to lose the AEW title to Eddie Kingston or anybody at Full Gear, anything like that. But maybe something happens before then and the title goes off of him. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. But that being said, that is a very big match for anyone hoping to see an AEW New Japan partnership. Jon Moxley and Hiroshi Tanahashi are basically like up there as the faces of their respective companies. You know, it's very exciting to see a possibility like that. And it's just very exciting as a wrestling fan to see that match because that match never has happened before and will be fantastic because they're two excellent pro wrestlers.
And I think it's also just like you said, I just love Hiroshi Tanahashi. Like, just, if it was up to me and someone said to me, you know what, Ibushi for main event at Wrestle Kingdom, or just let Tanahashi take it, I'd say just give it to Tanahashi. Let him main event every Wrestle Kingdom. Let him main event every every big New Japan show. So yeah, like you said, they're both basically the golden boys of their company, and to have them to wrestle each other would be amazing. Whereas Kenta, I think we've said this before, still quite mid-card in New Japan, and it would sort of, if he went against Moxley, it would be more like, yeah, we know Moxley's gonna beat Kenta. Whereas with Tanahashi, it's like, well, we could actually maybe see a change in title.
Yeah, it honestly, I mean, I could probably see either of them take the title off of Moxley just for the sake of, you know, Moxley can't really go and wrestle in New Japan very often currently. So it could be a case of just like, we need to get this title off of Moxley just for the sake of having it on New Japan shows. But I definitely would see Tanahashi beating Moxley as more of a possibility than Kenta doing it.
Yeah.
I also want to give a quick shout out in the chat to our mod mother, doing great job as always. So thank you very much. This is we're up there. This is maybe like the biggest viewership that we've had. We've got 145 people watching right now, so that's very good for us on a New Japan stream. Thank you all very much for joining us. And as we prepare to wrap up, there are a couple more matches at Power Struggle. One of which, Kazuchika Okada versus the Great Okan, kind of the gateway stepping stone match to the Kazuchika Okada Will Ospreay match that I think we will see at Wrestle Kingdom. Likely.
I think that's going to be, especially we don't really think Okada's going to have anything to do with the main title picture at the moment because he lost to Ibushi. So that will probably be, and I also think it's going to be different for Okada to be in a special singles match at Wrestle Kingdom instead of a big title match. Yeah.
I mean, we kind of saw that with his match with Jay White at Wrestle Kingdom 13. But again, I kind of get a very similar feeling to a potential match with Will Ospreay. Just like that kind of young, now up-and-coming heel that's going up against basically the company's golden boy, you know, at least in the last few years anyway. And it will be exciting. Not necessarily looking forward to a match with Great Okan, but regardless, you know,
I almost think like
you gotta do.
That's going to be an interesting match because Ospreay made a massive deal about Great Okan being undefeated, but I mean, unless there's some interference in there, can you really see somebody beating Kazuchika Okada?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I don't necessarily think Great Okan might pick up the win, but hey, you know, I've seen crazier things happen. We will see. And the final match on that show will be the King of Pro Wrestling match between Toru Yano and Zack Sabre Jr., which might not steal the show, but will be probably the most different match on the card, to say the least.
It's probably going to be one of my favorite because, like I said before, they were one of my favorite G1 matches. But yeah, that's the thing with King of Pro Wrestling. We don't know what it's going to be. Is there going to be a stipulation? Is Zack going to say, you know what, it's going to be submissions only and Yano cannot take off the turnbuckle or use tape? It could be anything. It's just going to be a great way to start the show. It's going to be fun. It might be quick, it might be long. Literally with Yano, anything could happen.
Anything could happen. I mean, I'm not super invested in what's going on with the King of Pro Wrestling tournament trophy type title, whatever they want to call it, but it'll be a nice little fun match. Zack Sabre Jr. is a very entertaining character, to say the least. You know, whether it's him getting beaten by someone like Yano or just being fed up with Yano's antics and things like that. It'll be very interesting to see him once again go in there and have another match like this. I don't really know what's next for Sabre. Obviously, him and Taichi are the IWGP Tag Team Champions, so they will probably have a Tag Team Championship match at Wrestle Kingdom against whoever wins the World Tag League. But there didn't seem to be like that real big singles feud coming out of the G1 Climax for him, as we've seen in recent years, whether it be his match with SANADA, kind of leading into Wrestle Kingdom last year, things like that. So I don't know. We're going to have to see for this one going forward. Obviously, with the Best of the Super Junior and the World Tag League tournament starting up, that will be kind of the gateway into what's coming for Wrestle Kingdom. With Christopher Jazzcat, again, saying with a $2 super chat there. Thank you, Christopher. Who do you think Zack Sabre Jr. will face at Wrestle Kingdom? Zack Sabre Jr. is the best. A tag team of some sort.
I don't know. I'd like to see if we get something, maybe like Suzuki. I don't know who he'd team with, because obviously apart from those three, the rest are juniors. I think it'd be great to see another, because Taichi versus Minoru Suzuki in the G1 was great. But even if something happens where SANADA doesn't get a shot at Wrestle Kingdom, maybe SANADA and Shingo versus Taichi and Zack Sabre Jr., because like we've said this, SANADA and Zack Sabre Jr. is such an amazing feud, and Taichi and Shingo was really good in this year's G1 as well.
There's so much to look forward to. You know, we've got obviously the Best of the Super Juniors and the World Tag League final, or not the finals, but the whole tournament for that matter, before we get to the finals. And it will be very interesting kind of seeing, because there's not as much time between the G1 Climax and Wrestle Kingdom 15 now than there usually is. So we've got to get a number of these matches kind of like not out of the way, but there's less time, you know, in order to have them. So we will see. We're getting close to the hour mark, so we'll probably wrap up just around then. So again, a big thank you to everyone who has joined us for all of the G1 Climax coverage that we've done over the last month plus. It'll be kind of wait and see for the first little while, just to see what we're going to be doing going forward with New Japan Pro Wrestling coverage. Obviously, we're not going to be doing live reactions of every show. That would be a bit much. But you can probably assume that we'll do live reactions for Power Struggle coming up in the beginning of November. And maybe we'll do some of these podcast reviews for similar shows like the Best of the Super Juniors. There's obviously going to be a lot of shows to watch, but hopefully we can keep up with them and then bring you our thoughts as we've continued to do throughout the entire G1 Climax. Before we go, Sonal, what is your match of the G1 Climax tournament?
Ibushi versus Suzuki. Honestly, I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, but I think a lot of people can agree with me. It was completely different. It was Ibushi staying mainly on the mat, playing to Suzuki's strengths. And even at the end, when Suzuki lost, you saw the smile on his face because he knew he had just put on an amazing match with Ibushi.
I would have to agree with you. That was my match of the tournament as well. It was just fantastic. I cannot say enough good things about it. There were other good matches as well, but if I have to recommend one match in the whole tournament for people to go out of their way to see, and one match that I will probably go back to time and time again, I'm going to be choosing Kota Ibushi versus Minoru Suzuki. So that will be another excellent one. Of course, Sonal, you can be found on YouTube. Tell people where they can find you.
So you can find me on Sonal's Life. I've actually got a video coming up today, so keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, right on. You know, we, of course, are big fans of Sonal. That's why we keep her around. She's excellent. And, of course, hopefully we will have many more opportunities to do some more of this coverage together in the future. You know, it's been a wonderful experience so far as we now approach the hour mark. Again, thank you to all of the regular people that join us in the chat. Obviously, we've become very familiar with the names that pop up You know, you are not taken for granted. We do appreciate all of you. So thank you. We hope that you continue to join us every time that we come back for more New Japan Pro Wrestling coverage, as we are all fans of New Japan, just as you are. That being said, thank you very much for joining us today. We will see you next time.